Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to be tackling something today that I think a lot of you have thought about, and that is uh, that blurry line between helping and enabling. We all want to support the people that we care about, but what if our good intentions are actually kind of backfiring on us?
Mm.
And that's what we're going to be diving into today
Yes.
with the book Victory Series, Enabling versus Helping.
Right.
Um, and this book argues that there's a real crisis of enabling
Wow.
in America, and a crisis that impacts us not just personally, but ripples out to our families, workplaces,
Mm-hmm.
and even our social systems.
Yeah, and what's striking is how often enabling flies under the radar, you
Mm.
know? It feels like the right thing to do,
Right.
especially for those we love.
Yeah.
But this book makes a strong case that it can actually cause long-term damage for everyone involved.
Yeah, so let's break this down. The book starts by defining enabling.
Okay.
And it's not as simple as just lending a hand, right? It's
Uh-huh.
about stepping in and taking away someone's responsibility to deal with their own issues.
It's like we're constantly putting out fires for them instead of letting them learn how to handle the heat themselves.
Precisely. It's the difference between giving someone a fish every day and teaching them to fish.
Right.
One keeps them dependent, the other empowers them to provide for themselves. But you know where this gets really interesting is that the book argues this isn't just about individual actions.
Okay.
It claims that there are systems in place, even social safety nets, that can unintentionally foster enabling behaviors.
Ah, that's a pretty big claim.
Mm.
Are there any examples in the book that kind of back that up?
Absolutely. The book uses the example of certain welfare programs that provide financial assistance without necessarily equipping recipients with the skills or resources
Mm-hmm.
they need to break free from that cycle of dependence. It argues that while providing support is crucial, it needs to be coupled with opportunities for growth and self-sufficiency.
Okay, so we're seeing that enabling can be a lot more widespread than we realize, but how does this actually play out in our everyday lives?
I think a lot of us can relate to wanting to help our loved ones, but maybe we're not sure where that line crosses over into enabling.
Well, the book gives some very specific examples that I think a lot of listeners will find relatable. For instance, imagine a parent helping their child with homework.
Okay.
Helping might look like guiding them to resources or
Right.
explaining a difficult concept. Enabling, on the other hand, would be doing the entire assignment for them,
Oh, yeah.
preventing them from learning and developing their own abilities.
You know, that reminds me of something that I used to do with a friend who always seemed to be in crisis mode. I thought I was being supportive by always being there to offer solutions.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I realized I was probably preventing her from developing her own coping mechanisms. It's easy to fall into those patterns without even realizing it.
It absolutely is. And the book dives into the deeper damage that enabling can cause. It's not just about the immediate problem that's
Yeah.
being fixed, it's about the long-term impact on a person's growth and development.
So what kind of impact are we talking about here?
Well, the book emphasizes that enabling can prevent someone from developing essential life skills,
Okay.
like problem-solving, decision-making, and resilience.
Mhm.
It can also lead to a decline in confidence and self-esteem as they become increasingly reliant on others to handle their challenges.
It's almost like we're stunting their emotional growth by constantly swooping in to rescue them.
Right.
But wait, if it's so damaging, why do people enable in the first place?
Mm.
It doesn't seem like anyone would intentionally set out to hurt
Right.
someone they care about.
That's the key point. Enabling often stems from the best intentions. It can be driven by love, a sense of responsibility, even guilt.
Oh,
Sometimes enablers are afraid of conflict or rejection,
right.
so they give in to demands to keep the peace. And in some cases, enabling can be a way of maintaining control or avoiding facing our own issues.
Hmm.
The book actually highlights the need to kind of examine our own motivations.
Okay.
Why are we so quick to jump in and fix things for others? What are we avoiding by doing so?
Wow. That adds a whole nother layer of complexity to this. It's not just about the person being enabled, it's also about the enabler's own emotional baggage.
All right.
It sounds like this can get pretty messy.
It can, and the book doesn't shy away from those messy dynamics. In fact, one of the most intriguing aspects it explores is how enabling can actually lead to manipulation, even if it's unintentional.
Hold on, manipulation. That sounds pretty serious. How does that even happen?
Think of it this way. When someone becomes accustomed to having their needs met without consequence,
Mm-hmm.
they develop certain expectations. And when those expectations aren't met, when the enabler tries to set boundaries
Okay.
or pull back, The enabled person might resort to manipulation tactics to maintain the status quo.
So it's like they've learned that certain behaviors will get them what they want,
Mhm.
and they continue to use those behaviors even if they're hurting the other person.
Exactly. The book gives this example of a teenager who suddenly becomes overwhelmed with schoolwork or chores whenever their parents try to get them to take on more responsibility. It's a way of pushing those emotional buttons to get the parents to back down and continue doing things for them.
Yeah,
And the thing is, the teenager might not even be consciously aware they're doing it.
that's pretty mind-blowing. Are there other examples of these manipulation tactics? Like, what should people be on the lookout for?
The book delves into several tactics, from guilt trips and playing the victim to outright anger and threats. What's particularly fascinating is how it highlights how even positive traits like empathy and intuition can be weaponized
Oh, wow.
by a skilled manipulator. Imagine someone who is naturally good at reading emotions.
Right.
That ability can be used to figure out exactly which buttons to push to get the desired reaction.
Yeah, it's like a dark side to those usually helpful qualities.
Yeah.
It sounds like this enabling dynamic can be quite insidious, impacting both the person being enabled and the enabler in ways they might not even realize. But what I'm curious about is the larger impact. The book claims that enabling can have financial and emotional costs that go beyond individual relationships. Can you elaborate on that? So we've uncovered how deeply ingrained enabling can be, from our personal relationships to larger societal systems. And we've started to kind of peek into the shadow side.
Yeah.
How seemingly helpful actions can actually stunt growth and even fuel manipulative behaviors. It's heady stuff.
Right.
But the book doesn't just leave us hanging with just the problems. It offers a path forward, right?
Absolutely. Victory Series Enabling versus Helping isn't just about diagnosis. It's about providing a framework for change. And a key part of that framework, as you've hinted at, is understanding the financial and emotional toll enabling takes.
Okay, let's talk numbers. What kind of financial costs are we talking about here?
The book delves into some alarming statistics, particularly when it comes to parents supporting adult children. It cites studies showing parents dipping into retirement savings, racking up debt, even jeopardizing their own financial security to bail out their grown children, who in many cases are capable of supporting themselves.
Yep.
And it's not just families. The book examines how workplace enabling, like managers constantly covering for underperforming employees,
Oh, yeah.
can lead to decreased productivity, missed deadlines, and ultimately a hit to the bottom line.
It's fascinating how something that starts as a personal act of helping can have these ripple effects impacting not just individuals,
Right.
but entire
It
organizations.
really highlights how interconnected we are. And let's not forget the emotional costs.
Right.
The book emphasizes how enablers often end up feeling resentful, burned out, and emotionally drained. They're constantly giving, often at their own expense,
Yeah.
and may start to feel taken advantage of.
That rings so true. I've definitely felt that sense of resentment in the past when I realized I was doing more harm than good by constantly rescuing a friend. It's like I was sacrificing my own well-being in the name of helping, which ultimately wasn't helping either of us.
That's a powerful realization, and the book encourages us to acknowledge these emotional costs. It's not selfish to recognize that we have limits and that constantly enabling others can deplete our own resources. And this brings us to the heart of the solution the book proposes: setting boundaries. I know the word boundaries can sometimes get a bad rap. People think it's about being harsh or uncaring.
Right.
But the book presents a different perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Boundaries are not about cutting people off or withholding love. They're about defining what we are and are not willing to do for others. It's about protecting our own well-being while also allowing the other person the space they need to grow and learn. Okay, I'm getting that, but how do we actually set those boundaries? It's easy to say, but putting it into practice, especially with someone who's used to being enabled, seems incredibly difficult.
It's definitely a process, and the book offers a really practical approach. It starts with getting clear about our own limits. What are we willing to do?
Right.
What are our non-negotiables? This is going to be different for each relationship and situation. For example, the boundaries you set with a child are going to look different from those you set with a friend or a coworker.
That makes sense. One size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
But once we know those limits, how do we actually communicate them without causing a huge blow-up?
The book emphasizes being direct and assertive, but also compassionate. It's not about attacking the other person or making them feel bad. It's about clearly stating what we are and are not willing to do and why.
Mhm.
For instance, if you have an adult child constantly asking for money, a
Yeah.
boundary could be, I love you and I want to support you, but I'm not going to continue giving you money. I'm happy to help you create a budget or explore other resources, but I need to protect my own financial security.
So it's about offering support in a way that empowers them to find solutions rather than just handing them a quick fix.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the book provides examples for various scenarios dealing with a friend who always dumps their problems on you without taking action or setting boundaries with a coworker who constantly misses deadlines. The key is consistency.
Okay.
It's going to be tough, especially at first, because the enabled person might push back, try to guilt you, or even resort to those manipulation tactics we talked about earlier. But if you hold firm to those boundaries, you're sending a powerful message. I love and respect you, but I also respect myself enough to protect my own well-being.
And by doing that, you're actually helping them more in the long run because you're giving them the opportunity to develop their own strength and resilience.
Oh.
I love how the book reframes the whole concept of boundaries. It's not about being mean or withholding love. It's actually an act of love and respect for both yourself and the other person.
Precisely. And speaking of tools for change, the book mentions some fascinating resources developed by Value Builders International, or VBI, that can help in this process. They've created these surveys that measure the depth of enabling and enabled dependency.
Those surveys were mentioned briefly earlier, but I'd love to hear more about them. How can those be helpful?
What's really interesting about these surveys is they provide concrete data.
Oh,
They help pinpoint the specific areas where enabling behaviors are most pronounced.
okay.
And having that objective information, that data, can be incredibly empowering. It takes the guesswork out of it. You're not just relying on feelings or perceptions.
Right.
You have actual evidence to work with. And the book argues that this data-driven approach can be a real game changer in terms of breaking those entrenched patterns.
So it's like getting a clear snapshot of the dynamics at play, which can then be used to create a targeted plan for change.
Exactly.
And the book specifically recommends these VBI resources.
It does. It highlights how VBI offers coaching and support based on the results of those surveys,
Okay.
which can be a really valuable resource for those who want personalized guidance and accountability in this process. But even without those specific tools, the book emphasizes that awareness is the first step.
Right.
Recognizing that these patterns exist, understanding the motivations behind them, and being willing to make changes, that's where true transformation begins.
So let's say someone listening to this is realizing, okay, this is me. I'm enabling someone, or maybe I'm allowing myself to be enabled.
Yeah.
What's the first concrete step they can take?
Well, the book suggests starting with self-reflection, honestly asking yourself, why am I engaging in this behavior? What are my fears? What are my needs? What am I hoping to gain or avoid? Because until we understand our own motivations, it's hard to change those patterns.
So it's about getting to the root of the issue,
Right.
not just addressing the surface level behaviors. And is there anything else people can do to support themselves in this process?
The book strongly emphasizes the power of open and honest communication. If you're the enabler, have a heartfelt conversation with the person you've been enabling.
Okay.
Explain how their actions are impacting you, why you're setting boundaries, and what you hope to achieve. And if you're the one being enabled, be honest with yourself about the role you've been playing. Are you afraid of taking responsibility? Are you relying on others to rescue you from discomfort?
It sounds like
Yeah.
this is a two-way street. Both the enabler and
Yeah.
the enabled person need to be willing to take ownership and communicate honestly about their needs and feelings.
Exactly. And it's not just about talking, it's about listening, truly hearing the other person's perspective and trying to understand where they're coming from. Because at the end of the day, this is about relationships.
Yeah.
And healthy relationships require empathy, compassion, and a willingness to work together to create a dynamic that benefits everyone involved.
So it's not about blame or judgment. It's about coming together with a shared goal of growth and mutual support.
Right.
And speaking of support, the book also mentions the value of seeking professional help, right?
It does. It acknowledges that these dynamics can be deeply ingrained and complex, and sometimes we need outside help to break free.
Yeah.
Therapists, coaches, even support groups can provide guidance tools and a safe space to work through these challenging issues.
So whether it's through self-reflection, communication, or seeking professional support, there are concrete steps people can take to move from enabling to empowering. And while we've been focusing on the negative aspects, the book ultimately offers a message of hope, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It emphasizes that it's never too late to make changes. Whether you're a parent, friend, partner, or even a manager, you can choose to shift from a dynamic of rescuing and fixing to one of empowering and supporting growth. And the book reminds us that this isn't about perfection, it's about progress. There will be setbacks, there will be challenges. But the key is to keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to create healthier, more fulfilling relationships in all areas of our lives.
And with that empowering message, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Victory Series Enabling versus Helping with some final thoughts and a powerful call to action. Don't go anywhere.
And we're back, ready to kind of wrap up our look at enabling versus empowering. It's been a deep dive and maybe a bit unsettling as we've kind of uncovered just how insidious enabling can be.
Yeah.
But the good news is Victory Series Enabling versus Helping doesn't just point out the problem. It offers us a path forward. Absolutely. And that path, as we've been talking about, is paved with awareness, boundaries, communication, and a fundamental shift from fixing to empowering. It's about recognizing that true help doesn't come from shielding people from their problems, but from supporting them as they learn to navigate those challenges and develop their own strength and resilience.
Yeah, it's like we've been talking about teaching someone to fish instead of constantly handing them one.
Mm.
But I think what's really powerful about this book is that it goes beyond that simple analogy. It kind of delves into the psychological and emotional complexities of these dynamics, helping us understand the motivations behind both enabling and allowing ourselves to be enabled.
Right. And it provides practical strategies for breaking those patterns, from setting clear boundaries to communicating effectively and even seeking professional support when needed. It's a very empowering message.
It really is. So for our listeners who are thinking, okay, I get it, this all makes sense, but where do I go from here? What's the key takeaway? What's the one thing they should walk away with from this deep dive?
I think the most important thing is to view your relationships through this new lens of enabling versus empowering. Ask yourself honestly, am I truly supporting the growth and well-being of the people that I care about, or am I inadvertently keeping them stuck? And if you realize you've fallen into some enabling patterns, don't beat yourself up about it. It happens. We all have those blind spots. The key is to acknowledge it and start making changes.
And remember, change doesn't have to be drastic or overnight. It can start with small steps. Maybe it's having that difficult conversation with a friend who always relies on you to solve their problems, or maybe it's finally setting that boundary with an adult child who keeps asking for financial handouts.
Yeah, even those seemingly small actions can create a ripple effect, leading to a healthier and more empowering dynamic for everyone involved.
And the book emphasizes that this isn't just about individual relationships. It's about challenging those systems and structures that perpetuate enabling behaviors. We talked about welfare programs earlier. Imagine if those programs were redesigned to not only provide support, but also to equip people with the skills and resources they need to become self-sufficient.
It's a powerful vision, and it highlights how this shift from enabling to empowering has the potential to transform not just our personal lives, but also our communities and society as a whole.
So to bring it all back to you, our listener, we want to leave you with this question. What is one small step that you can take today to move from enabling to empowering in your own life? It could be a conversation, a boundary, or simply a shift in your mindset. The book reminds us that even the smallest actions can have a profound impact.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are resources available like the ones offered by Value Builders International to support you on this journey.
So that's it for our deep dive into Victory Series Enabling versus Helping. We hope this conversation has given you a new perspective and, most importantly, empowered you to create healthier, more fulfilling relationships in all areas of your life.
Until next time.
See you then.